In September of 2012, a Twitter account under the name Mingy Django opened. It was a group of former Rare employees announcing their intent to make a successor to the beloved game Banjo-Kazooie. After a while, the account was left abandoned. In an AMA with Grant Kirkhope, the original composer of the games, it had appeared that the project had all but fallen apart. For a while, that was the last that was heard of this mysterious Rare project. Until the Twitter account reopened one day, this time under the name Platonic Games. It announced an intent to continue their successor to Banjo-Kazooie under the codename Project Yooka-Laylee. There was a Kickstarter announced for this project, the project that would eventually come to be known as Yooka-Laylee. Yooka-Laylee's Kickstarter reached its goal in half an hour and by the end of the campaign period had funded over $3 million US. It advertised itself as a revival of the 3D platforming genre, a rare revival so to speak. As the years went by, people waited and waited for the game that supposedly was supposed to bring the golden age of platforming back. Suddenly, the release date was upon us, and upon the supposed failure of Yooka-Laylee, I will refrain from stating my opinion on it, many people stated that the 3D platformer was officially dead. It had relied too much on the nostalgia of the past and there was no way the 3D platformer could adapt to modern gaming standards, which is obviously untrue. But how did we reach this point? How did we reach the stage where the once mighty 3D platformer has fallen to a point of near death? Allegedly. Plus, the thing that everybody forgets is that at least 73,000 people were willing to fund Yooka-Laylee before it even came out. That's already over double the average number of copies a Steam game usually sells, which has a lot of points of error in general, but that's just the number we're going to go with. So let's examine. How did the 3D platformer fall down this path, where one game became so volatile to the entire ecosystem of the genre? There's a point in every genre of games where it needs to start breaking the norm in order to keep surviving as a genre. Let's go back to the 90s. This was a critical time for video games as Nintendo and Sega began transitioning their mascots into the third dimension, pivotal to the way those games would continue in the future. We saw how that turned out. From here on, every move that developers made was critical to the success of the games they were making and the genre it was in. The 3D platformer and the first/third-person shooter evolved hand in hand with each other. But the shooter grew much quicker. Half-Life and its scripted sequences, Halo's perfected multiplayer, Winback's cover system, Resident Evil 4's introduction of over-the-shoulder viewing, Half-Life 2's advanced physics, Portal's use of a gun as a puzzle-solving mechanic, the list goes on and on. The 3D platformer never developed like this. Aside from transitioning mascots into a 3D space, nothing really changed about the 3D platformer. I would argue that the most it developed was with two games, Conker's Bad Fur Day, which showed how the platforming genre isn't just for kids, and with Tomb Raider, which shook the world with its female protagonist. But it wasn't enough. The shooter grew fast, as stated before. Nintendo and Rare did their best to keep up, but then Microsoft, now having been established as a serious threat, made sure Rare wouldn't be a problem by buying them. There's been a lot of speculation as to why Nintendo didn't try to keep Rare. I don't know the answer, and I don't intend on answering it. All I know is that gaming might have gone down a much different path had Nintendo saved Rare from their current fate. Rare was out of the platforming picture at this point. The games they made ranged from action-adventure to simulation games to whatever this was supposed to be. But Nintendo kept chugging along, and they weren't the only ones in the picture. There was Crash, Sly Cooper, Spyro, a lot of companies still invested in the 3D platforming game. But the shooter was moving at the fastest pace it ever had been, and the platformer was not. Not all games gave up that easily. Some platforming games decided to add new elements and make the transition into shooter territory. Other games just decided to stop being platformers. It is obvious that there was a clear decline from then to now in terms of game domination. The platformer was developing, but not quick enough for the state of the gaming world. It was bright, colorful, meaningless, and gamers wanted something with a little more substance, a little more meaning. The 3D platformer needed one game to prove that it could be worth something, more than just a cute character collecting things and reaching the end of a level. There needed to be weight, stakes in play. And the worst part is, this game exists. It was just too late. Psychonauts released on April 19, 2005, a year that was still reeling from the 2004 that was Half-Life 2, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Halo 2, Far Cry, and much, much more. Expectations for games were beyond high. Tastes were changing. People just weren't interested. But it caught the attention of a few, And those people told a few more, and those people told a few more. And because of that, Psychonauts has a longevity that games don't usually have. So what makes it so special? Why would it have potentially saved the platformer? First off, Psychonauts has an actual story, unlike most other 3D platformers ever, which have a beginning and an end with no middle. Raz is a circus runaway who is cursed by psychics. However, he discovers he has psychic powers, so he runs away to this government training facility disguised as a summer camp so he can hone his powers. While he's there, he discovers a heinous plot, and I'll stop there for spoilers, but really I'm about to spoil the rest of the game concept-wise, so go play it. A common complaint about 3D platformers is that there's too much pointless collecting, so much that they've been lovingly named collectathons. I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of collecting in Psychonauts. A lot of it. But every bit of it has a purpose. It's not like there's a diamond that's just randomly here because a lamau, and don't forget about that feather in the corner. There's a justification for almost everything you need to collect in this game. The first one is the figments. These are literally figments of that character's imagination. Something they think is there, but is not. So the mind you're in is the state of their mind, and the figments are things the character is adding to it. It's brilliant, really. There's the emotional baggage, which needs a tag to be attached to it in order to be happy. There's the mental vaults, which try to run away from you and contain repressed memories of the character you're in. Most things in the overworld have some attachment to the government's interference with the camp and Psytanium energy. The main aspect of the game is that you go inside other characters' minds in order to solve a goal in real life. And this is where the game truly shines. Each character's mind is shaped in the way that they function, the way that they think. Sasha, the no-nonsense agent at the camp, has a mind like a minimalist cube. Everything with hidden meaning underneath the surface. Gloria, the actress's mind, is a show of her abusive childhood and her constant mood swings affecting its view. Edgar's mind shows how his memories of high school bullying are still chasing after him and affecting success in his life. The final boss is literally dealing with yours and the antagonist's combined parental issues. This game is the definition of moving a genre forward. It was mature, but not heavy. It was fun, but not childish. It had meaning. It incorporated elements from the shooter, the platformer, the rail grinder, the collectathon, and so many other genres. It was the move that platformers needed. But it was too late. For a variety of reasons, Psychonauts didn't do well when it originally released. If it had, it might have been the game that elevated the 3D platformer to the same level as the shooter, or at least somewhat close. It was the game that proved a platformer could be more than just fun mechanics in a bright environment. I'm not saying that's all the platformer ever was, but when you look at how the genre is currently perceived, that seems to be the main thing people draw on. Yooka-Laylee, A Hat in Time, hoping to resurrect a genre of games of a certain style with a certain type of gameplay. The thing is, the 3D platformer didn't die in the 90s. It just faded out of sight from the inability to let the genre grow in the way it needed to, like the shooter did. Could Psychonauts by itself have saved the entire genre? I believe it could have. Even if it couldn't, the platformer still had many chances to redeem itself. But something just wasn't right. Whether it was the genre, players, or the industry, these changes just never stuck. I'm a huge fan of 3D platformers. My go-to game growing up was the Ape Escape series. So everything I say with love in order to see the genre succeed. There shouldn't need to be a 3D platformer revival. There's an overabundance of crafting games, battle royale games, RPG Maker games, trading card games, free-to-play stuff, etc., etc. There's a few 3D platformers here and there, and within those 3D platformers there's a few real beautiful hidden gems that are still really trying to push the genre forward. It's a real shame that the genre itself has been relegated to hidden gem status aside from one AAA release, 2 hyped up indie releases, and the other things that kind of happened but didn't really get any attention. A Hat in Time and Yooka-Laylee crushed their Kickstarters, and Super Mario Odyssey set mega sales records. My prediction, or at least my hope, is that from this, companies will begin to notice there's still some value in the 3D platformer. Some companies have already noticed this. Sonic Team, through all their faults, still tries to put out a Sonic game time after time. Microsoft has chosen Super Lucky's Tale as its platformer of choice, making it exclusive to Microsoft machines, and Knack and Little Big Planet are Sony's major contenders at the moment. Many have labeled 2017 as the year of the platformer. Hopefully it won't just be the single year of the platformer. If all goes well, it will be the year the platformer continued its development as a mainstream game genre. The year where games tried their hardest to accomplish an impossible task, do something entirely new while still being exactly the same. This was an impossible goal for some, a goal with the expectations so lofty that they could never be met realistically. But maybe that's for the best. There's a point in every genre of games where it needs to start breaking the norm in order to keep surviving as a genre. Yooka-Laylee didn't try to break this norm. In fact, it tried so hard to shove itself back into a norm that no longer existed that it hurt its end goal more than help it. A Hat in Time and Super Mario Odyssey both built upon games of the past, instead of replicating them completely. But we can only build so high. There's a point in every genre of games where it needs to start breaking the norm in order to keep surviving as a genre. According to this, we need to start breaking the norm again soon. And it looks like we will. I hope you're paying attention this time.